right, today in Discovering Meaning, we are talking about building healthy relationships and doing this by understanding communication styles. And if you know me, I love the term sapere aude from the ancient Greeks, which means dare to know. This will be really helpful with education and really determining what people's motivations are when they're communicating to you, kind of what's going on under the surface, and really humanizing people and helping you understand more about yourself. So I really love learning about communication styles. It really changed things for me and how I communicate with others, and noticed a lot of things in myself, which I will talk a little bit about my own personal experiences with communication styles. And we really get to learn how human we are and and see where maybe we can improve on the health of our communication. And so it's a really interesting topic that I'm super pumped to share with everyone tonight. So we're going to delve into the world of communication styles, and understanding these styles not only improves our interactions, but also helps us to navigate those complex social landscapes effectively. And I'm sure every single person listening to this has been in a situation where they were at a loss of how to communicate with specific people in their behaviors, and there was just no healthy communication going on. So we're also going to talk about how to navigate that as well. And once we kind of get more of an understanding of what the communication styles are, what it's all about, and recognizing the different ones. So we'll start here, and we're going to categorize communication styles into 5 main types. So there's assertive, there's aggressive, there's passive aggressive. This is probably the one that people have heard the most about. Passive and destructive. So each has unique characteristics and impacts on the psyche. So assertive communication. Assertive communication involves expressing oneself openly, honestly, while respecting others. It's direct, clear, and respectful. It really comes back to the term I say all the time: do no harm, take no shit. This is like walking that fine line and really being able to express how it is you feel and also respect other people at the same time. Easier said than done, but once you master assertive communication, the world is your oyster, because all relationships will be at their highest level they can be. We can't control what the other person does, but it will be at the highest level it can be from your perspective and your point of view. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and what that looks like as we go along here. So recognizing assertive communication. Assertive communicators maintain eye contact for the most part, use firm but polite tones, and openly express needs and feelings without being dominating, without trying to like take over someone or control them. So the benefits of assertive communication: this style fosters respect, minimizes conflict, and promotes honest dialogue. It's considered the healthiest form of communication by far. This is what we are aiming for when we're communicating, is to consistently be an assertive communicator. Again, easier said than done in some situations. It takes some practice sometimes, yet it is just such a healthy way to communicate. So aggressive communication. This is kind of the second one we're going to look at today. Aggressive communication is about winning. It's about right or wrong, black or white. It's about winning at all costs, even if it means it's at the expense of others. And so it can be dominating, hostile, and sometimes intimidating. So this tends to be something that men tend to be more aggressive in aggressive communication. Of course, women can be as well. The tendency is men, because of social and training, really, because a lot of men have been trained that the only emotion that they're allowed to express is anger, and that can come through in aggressive communication. And so often this is where relationships can really go off the rails, because for obvious reasons, this is not a healthy form of communication. So recognizing aggressive communication, the signs include loud, demeaning tones, poor listening skills, like don't even care what you have to say. They just want to get their point across, and often interrupting or talking over others. The impact of aggressive communication, as I'm sure you could guess, it can lead to conflicts, resentment, and definitely create damage in relationships, for sure. Passive communication. So this tends to be more women will go into passive communication. A lot of people that get sick are passive communicators, and we'll kind of go through why in a minute here. So it involves avoiding direct expression of needs or feelings, often to avoid conflict. I am so been there, done that when it comes to passive communication. It's something I still work on, and being more assertive. And often this can lead to illness because you're bottling up emotions, and often have fear of saying things to avoid rejection, conflict, and it may be very real. You're avoiding real conflict where you know how this person's going to respond, so you just say nothing, because it's easier to just mold yourself and adapt to the situation in saying what you really need. And so often women can fall into this category of passive communication. So recognizing passive communication. Passive communicators often speak softly or apologetically. Not always. That isn't always the case, but it tends to be that way. And they fail to assert themselves. And they may have poor eye contact as well. And often passive communication can be for several reasons. It can be low self-esteem, low self-worth. It can also be legitimate you are in a relationship where you don't feel that you have the ability to express yourself without some sort of aggressive behavior in return, or some sort of response that can be frightening, quite frankly. And so often people will develop this passive communication style. So the consequences of passive communication: this style may prevent conflicts temporarily, but it definitely leads to misunderstandings, unmet needs, and internalized resentment. It can also result in explosions because there's such a buildup of this energy. I know for myself, when I was a passive communicator, I wouldn't express my needs at all. I would mold myself. Resentment would build up. And I would probably blow my gasket about every 6 months and shock the person that I was being passive with. And so that definitely can happen. And so needless to say, passive communication is not going to be effective long term. Sometimes you can use that technique if you know that you're not going to see the person again and you just want them to go away. But that's about the only time and place where it works. So passive aggressive communication, again, a lot of women fall into this because built up resentment, and also those underlying fears that if they're assertive and put themselves forward, that there's going to be some sort of reaction that is going to be frightening to them, disrupt their environment. And so passive aggressive communication is often something that women fall into. And so it's an indirect style that involves expressing negative feelings subtly rather than openly. So it can be manipulative or sarcastic. And so this is those little digs and that weird tones when you're talking, or they're everyone kind of knows what passive aggressive is, I think, where you know exactly a time and place where you've experienced passive aggressive communication or been the bearer of it. I know for sure I have communicated passive aggressively to try and have my needs met, and it didn't work. So all it does is start to create an environment where you're almost guaranteed to get a negative response, but it also is something that naturally happens. So with awareness, we can adapt and change this passive aggressive communication into that assertive, direct communication. Identifying passive aggressive communication. So signs include sarcastic comments, backhanded compliments, and subtle dig disguised as humor. So, when someone's like, it's just a joke. No. And so effects of passive aggressive communication. This style leads to confusion, hidden conflicts, and unresolved issues for sure. Destructive communication. So this is the fifth type of communication. Destructive communication is abusive. That there is no way to move around that. This is abusive communication. So it is very harmful. It involves belittling, mocking, or demeaning others to assert dominance. So that can be name calling as well. And it's just like burning the bridges. It's like setting everything on fire. It is exactly what it is. It says it is. It's destructive. So recognizing destructive communication, this style is characterized by insults, verbal abuse, and emotionally hurtful language. The person is aiming to cause harm. They want you to be hurt. Absolutely, they want you to feel hurt. So the impact of destructive communication, it destroys relationships. It breeds toxicity and can cause significant emotional harm. And this is often in abuse cycles, it is those destructive relationships. Someone will say something so awful that they can never take back, that you will always remember. And then you're supposed to work on repairing the relationship with them. If this is like a romantic relationship or a parent-child relationship, siblings, it often happens in families. And it creates such darkness in relationships where it's like you don't even want to. This is the type of person you're walking on eggshells around. You just don't want to be around them. And yet sometimes we're intertwined with people that have destructive communication. So we're going to talk a little bit more now on how we can create healthy communication, and then what to do if we're in a situation where the communication is looking more aggressive, destructive, and what to do about that. So first, let's go with strategies for healthy communication, because that's so important. And this is going to be for situations where both people love to have a win-win solution, everybody's working together, and that it's like both people are aiming for just a nice time. And so no matter the style we encounter, the goal is to communicate in a healthy, assertive manner, no matter what's going on over there. We cannot control other people, their behaviors, or their actions, but we can definitely control our own, building our own self-worth, our own self-respect, and our own trust in ourselves that we will respond in a way we feel good about. So this includes active listening, empathy, and clear expression of thoughts and feelings. Active listening. Active listening involves fully concentrating, understanding, responding, and remembering what is being said. It's not just about hearing, but truly understanding the other person's perspective. And all of us can fall into this. Some people are amazing active listeners. Most are not. And is something that I definitely have to be conscious of and aware of as well, because often I'm listening so I can respond. And so when we truly listen without developing a response until someone is finished speaking, that's part of active listening. Empathy in communication. So empathy allows us to understand and share the feelings of others. It's getting in the other person's perspective and really trying to see things from their eyes. So when we communicate with empathy, we build deeper connections and trust. People naturally trust others that are empathetic because you can't fake it. And so it definitely builds deeper connections with people and allows for more vulnerability. Clarity and conciseness. Being clear and concise helps prevent misunderstandings. It's about expressing your thoughts and feelings directly and simply. Now, this is easier said than done. This is something you really want to practice when you are in a fairly good mood, everything's going well. If we try to practice this only when we're in kind of a state of conflict or disagreement, it can be quite challenging because those adrenals are pumping and that animal brain is kicked in and that nervous system is on high alert. So the best thing we can do is practice these behaviors when we're in a calm state so that when we're out of that state, they become more natural and automatic. So nonverbal cues, we want to look for body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice that which often conveys more than words alone. I read a study, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's the majority of our percentage of communication and what we experience with a person is through their body language and their expressions. It isn't actually through words that we receive most of our information on what is going on with another person. And it all happens subconsciously. It's not like you're like, oh, look, they have their legs crossed, or oh, look, this, that. No, you just like have picked up so much stimulus and information throughout your lifetime. You have a good idea. That's why often you can be speaking to someone and it feels off, even though the words aren't. And that's why, because we really pick up these nonverbal signals through all types of stimulus through our bodies. And a lot of it is not going to show up through conscious awareness. You just kind of know that something's going on with someone. So being aware of these signs enhances communication because you can say, something seems off here. Do you want to share something? And just like be more direct in us asking the person to share what's going on. So assertiveness. Assertiveness is about expressing your views respectfully and standing up for your rights and needs without infringing on others. It's a balance between passive and aggressive styles. So it's right in the middle. And so we can be assertive and firm in what we believe without infringing on the other person's free will. And easier said than done. We'll get into what we do if the other person is not in a position where they even want to have any type of resolution, because that happens. And some people aren't interested in communicating to come to a win-win scenario. Some are interested in just venting all their internalized fear and anger and resentments and just using the other person essentially as a lightning rod and striking them. So let's talk, we'll definitely talk more about what to do in this situation with dealing with unhealthy communication styles. So when you're faced with unhealthy styles, the biggest thing is remain calm. You want to stay centered. This is really important for people that are chronically ill, especially in rejuvenating the nervous system. This is very important to try to reduce any sort of adrenal pumping going on and moving the system out of the parasympathetic nervous system into the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight state, which also is fawn, which would represent the passive style. So when we're faced with unhealthy styles, we need to remain calm. We need to assert boundaries. And so I would recommend going back to the Discovering Meaning episode on creating effective boundaries and what that looks like and how to do that. You want to avoid escalation, and we'll talk about how to do that as well. And you want to seek to understand before being understood. And again, easier said than done, but when we follow these protocols, you walk away feeling good about yourself. And that's number one, is you want to feel self-assured that you handled that the best way you possibly could. And will you make mistakes? Yeah. We're all human. We will constantly make mistakes. Quote unquote mistakes. There really aren't any. When you have good intentions and you don't mean to cause harm, when you make a mistake, apologize, move on, and forgive yourself. I think you know that that's my belief system around that, and I know it works. And so when we're working on our healthy communication styles, remember we're unlearning an entire lifetime of entrainment. And even people with good intentions towards us may have communicated with us in the unhealthy communication styles, just not knowing better. There's so much innocence in all of this. And yet, when we are dealing with someone who is destructive, aggressive, passive aggressive, passive doesn't seem to be as harmful. It's more harmful to the person who's passive. But the other three are harmful to the people around them. And it definitely drives a wedge in a relationship and pushes people further away from each other. So we really want to make sure that we ourselves take responsibility for ourselves in healthy communication. And then if we're finding the other person is wanting to continue in an unhealthy communication style, this is what we do. So we want to stay calm and composed. Maintaining your composure is key. So you're going to take deep breaths. When someone is there, like you're feeling your adrenals come up, you want to really breathe and think before you say anything. So don't respond in haste, and keep your emotions in check to avoid escalation. It's just keeping those emotions in place. You might have emotions that come up after the experience, but let that be within yourself. And otherwise we're going to end up in this back and forth. And now we have two people participating in unhealthy communication, and that gets us nowhere. So setting boundaries, crucial to establish boundaries. Clearly communicate what is acceptable and what isn't in the way others speak to you. And we really do determine how other people treat us, and by what we accept. And when we accept things, people will take that boundary and push it even further until we end up in a very difficult situation. So especially in a new relationship, we want to be establishing those boundaries right away. We want to be teaching people how to treat us. This is what works the best. If you're already in an existing relationship, setting boundaries can still be done, and it's going to be a doozy for those people that are used to walking all over you. And so again, I recommend going to the other Discovering Meaning video on setting boundaries and getting deeper into that, because that's just so important in our modern lifestyle and the changes we're making in this world. Having that autonomy and your own space and care for yourself is so important when it comes to living a happy life and healing your bodies. Avoiding escalation. So don't engage in arguments or provocations. Wow, Kristin, big words. Okay. Keeping responses brief and neutral can prevent situations from escalating. So in the biz, we call this gray rocking. And so you're essentially going to be as boring as possible and speak in a monotone voice. And the reason you do this is because when someone wants to escalate the argument or the disagreement and you have no interest in being a part of that, gray rocking is awesome, because they will escalate trying to get you to escalate. And when you stay neutral, chances are they will walk away. They'll exit the conversation themselves because they're not getting the fuel for the fire they're looking for. Usually when people are aggressive or destructive, they have some severe unmet needs, usually stems from childhood, as things do. And so, we can have compassion for their emotional immaturity and why they are the way they are, but it doesn't make it acceptable that it's being directed at you. And so it is up to you to avoid escalation and to create those boundaries. You're responsible for your own life and what you tolerate and what you accept. And if you're in a situation where you're with somebody who wants to escalate things, whether it's a boss, like, coworker, friend, whatever the situation, it's up to you to change that. You're responsible. And if you're communicating to them that this isn't acceptable and they're not listening, then some new decisions need to be made. So you really do want to seek to understand. And again, this is for our own well-being as well. When we seek to understand the root cause of the unhealthy behavior, when we ask someone directly, what is your motivation for talking to me this way? What is it that you really want? It throws people off guard. It really does, where they're like, whoa. And so if someone is destructive, they will avoid that and they'll make up some excuse as how you made them be that way. And so then you're dealing with an abusive personality that only wants to escalate this because that's how they get their energy. It's what they thrive on, is this chaos. And that is someone who is dealing with a mental condition. And again, you can have compassion for that, and also it's not your responsibility. So we can try to understand the root cause of the unhealthy behavior. And sometimes the underlying issues may be driving the other person's communication style. So if someone is willing to make the adaptations and this gets brought to light for them in an assertive and direct way, then sometimes a person will turn and take stock and have realization. I had someone call me out about being passive aggressive. I said something sarcastic to my kids, and I was with a friend of mine, and he was like, "Ooh, passive aggressive," and I was like, "Whoa, you're right." And it was like, it seemed like an innocent moment, but those types of comments with my children would add up, and then they would not feel as secure and safe with me. So I'm really grateful that he called that out and brought attention to that for me so that I could mend that and make amends with the kids and apologize to them, and then have awareness in the future and now in the present. So, it really depends on the personality type. Some people are very grateful to have those things pointed out to them. Some are not, and we do have to be tactful about it. So we really want to seek to understand. So when we ask questions and truly seek to understand, worst case scenario, we get an understanding of where this person really, where their motivations are and what they're looking for as an outcome in communication. So when to disengage. So recognize when it's time to disengage. If the conversation isn't productive or becomes disrespectful, it's okay to walk away. It's okay. And you can say, I'm walking away, and we will come back and have this conversation when I have come to a place where I feel calm. Because right now, anything I say is not going to be productive, and we need a reset here. And if this is a constant thing that's going on within an interpersonal relationship, then it's time to question the relationship in general. And of course, if you know me, I would never tell someone to stay or to go from a relationship, but it's something to know that this isn't okay. It's not okay. If you're constantly being disrespected, put down, belittled, mocked, called names, whatever it is, even if it's little sarcastic digs or I was just joking, these things cause harm over time, and built up resentments you're going to have a dysregulated nervous system because you feel like you're walking on eggshells in your own personal environment, and that's not acceptable. So it is important to be able to walk away and set those appropriate boundaries. So the conclusion and takeaway from today is daring to understand communication styles can have a profound beneficial impact on our ability to create and maintain healthy, When did I write this? How many spelling mistakes are in here? This must have been during my jet lag from my trip. A healthy relationship with others, and most importantly, ourselves. The biggest thing about learning communication styles is our relationship with ourselves, and just feeling good about how we communicate, and then navigating the relationships that we're communicating within is a secondary thing.